I know I'm mostly known for being a betta fish, but actually my betta fish only makes up like 30% of my identity, while the wolf is way more dominant. But in today's video I will certainly highlight my betta fish stereotype. Hi guys, welcome back to my Therian territory. You may call me Thorn, and in today's video I didn't want to do an informative video anymore. Just for a little bit, because I've been pumping out informative videos for weeks now, and I wanted to dive a little more into my own experience, because a lot of people have actually been asking me about what it is to be a betta fish. Because I know a betta fish is not a very common stereotype. The Latin word of the betta fish, also known as a Siamese fighting fish, is the Betta splendens, which is basically the betta aquarium fish that has been bred by humans. But there's actually other types of betta fishes out there. There's also the wild betta, which is the Betta imbellus. The betta fish originates from this wild betta, and they are seen within rice paddies in Thailand. So their natural habitat is very green and very high oxygen, etc. So no, I'm actually not an ocean fishy or a river fishy or anything like that. I am an aquarium fish who is used to more green environments. And I've actually never encountered another Betta splendens within the community before. I have, however, seen a Betta imbellus before, but they kind of peaked in the community and then they went away again. So if you're there, if you identify as a Betta imbellus, comment down below, because I want to meet you again. I miss you. So I know that betta fish is not very often seen within the community, but it is still a very real identity to me, and I will explain to you guys how I figured out that I am one. So before I found the Therian community, I actually already knew that I was a wolf. I identified as a wolf before I identified as a Therian. However, once I had found the Therian community, I actually started looking into my own experiences and my identities and such, and then at some point I kind of realized that there are certain things that I do consider non-human that don't exactly align the wolf identity. So I started questioning whether I had a second stereotype. This is also called polytherianthropy. And this was quite a journey. It took me about 3 months before I actually found out what exactly I was. There were pretty much a couple of factors that I had written down to figure out what type of animal I was. Two very important factors that I was looking into when looking for my identity was, first of all, I felt something on my back, something big, and I didn't know what it was. And second of all, I felt very colorful. There was something about color that I felt was very important when it came to my identity. The second part is kind of strange because it's not really an experience in a way, it's rather just some type of connection I felt. I just knew that I was colorful in a way, even though I actually barely have any connection to betta fishes in general, so that's kind of strange. But essentially I figured out that it had to do with my synesthesia. I have synesthesia. Synesthesia means that you have some type of condition within your brain that causes you to associate certain sensory inputs with other types of sensory inputs. The most common one being that when you see numbers in your head, you actually associate them with colors. You basically just see them in color, so to speak, even though it's all going on in your head. But there's honestly so many forms of synesthesia out there. You can like hear something and then taste something in your mouth, or you can eat something and then you, for example, see shapes within your mind. So anything is possible, really. One of the things I have is also the number thing, but most importantly for this case, whenever I see a person and I know them for a little while, I associate them with a certain color, and that's their color. And whenever I think of that person, I think of that color as well. The funny part was I never really had a color tied to myself because I knew myself too well. I was pretty much too colorful, so to speak. I had way too many colors to associate myself with. And at some point I kind of wanted to kind of narrow it down. Sometimes you can kind of influence your own synesthesia, and it pretty much came down to the colors red, pink, purple, and blue. This was the gradient of colors that I mostly identified myself with, and this played a huge role in finding my betta fish identity. So before I even knew that, I started questioning peacocks because I felt something big on my back and it was colorful. I just didn't know which colors yet, and I thought it was a peacock because, well, I didn't confirm anything, but like I questioned the peacock. So I kind of like wore the label for a little while, trying to find out if peacocks were anything that, you know, worked out for me. The whole idea of showing that limb or that part of the body off to seduce the female was something that I did certainly relate to. However, it turned out I don't really feel like an avian type of being. I don't feel like a bird in any way. So eventually I kind of told myself like I'm not a peacock. Eventually I also started looking more into other types of, you know, connections that I felt to habitats or food diets or anything like that that kind of weren't the same as my wolf THERIOTYPE. The first thing was certainly that I felt a great connection to very green habitats. At first I actually pretty much concluded to myself that it was a rainforest, so I started looking into rainforest animals. I felt a great connection to apes at some point. I looked into gibbons specifically, almost confirmed the gibbon, but eventually backed out from that one as well. I do have to say that sometimes I do kind of, in the back of my mind, still question the gibbon ape as a THERIOTYPE, although usually it's kind of like a phase, so to speak, so it kind of comes and then goes again. But it eventually led nowhere because I wasn't a bird, I wasn't a reptile, and any other colorful being within the rainforest I just didn't feel any connection to. It didn't feel like me, and it didn't match what I was experiencing. So the rainforest was a dead end eventually, unfortunately. And so I started looking on a more broader spectrum, and eventually I started looking into aquatic animals, which was new to me because I had never really thought myself to be any kind of aquatic animal. But right from the bat, when I looked into aquatic animals, it did make sense because I realized that I have always felt a really strange connection to water in a way that I cannot really describe. I've just always been, whenever I go into water, I just become myself in a very strange way, like in a new way that I never really expect. And I always want to be alone in the water, just kind of swimming around, and then I'm happy. It always feels kind of weird, but now that I know my THERIOTYPE, it makes a lot more sense. So I started looking into fishes that had like something big on the back, or like big fin or anything like that, and eventually I stumbled upon betta fishes. And when I looked into betta fishes, everything started to come together, all of the puzzle pieces started to fit, and eventually I was like, okay, this actually feels kind of me. There was something big going on my back, which was apparently my fin. Apparently I kind of experienced my betta fish self to be like horizontal like this, so the betta fish fin is on my back. It was a colorful being, all of the colors, the color gradient I mentioned before, it made sense because those type of betta fishes exist. Betta fishes naturally live in very green habitats, so that also made sense. And something I hadn't even looked into before is that betta fishes are very bold, very aggressive, and basically you cannot leave two male betta fishes within one tank or otherwise one will be left dead. They are called Siamese fighting fishes for a reason. They fight. I wouldn't necessarily say that I have a very aggressive type of personality, but I am very much bold, I am very much an extroverted person, and it just kind of made sense. And I'm not saying that I have aggressiveness issues, but when I do get angry, I like lash out. So that's something that betta fishes also certainly do. So the personality part suddenly also made sense. The last puzzle piece is that I also very much connected to bubble bed making, which is something that specifically male bettas do. It's basically the beginning of their mating process because they eventually stick the eggs that they create on top of the bubble bed. And it made sense because I suddenly had a flashback to when I was about like 10 years old or something, and we went to a camping place in France, and it was pretty much the last day before we went back to the Netherlands to like go home, and I wanted to swim. My brothers didn't feel like swimming, but I had to. I just had to swim because swimming was rare for me and I really, really wanted to do it. So I went into the pool on my own, and I basically stayed there for hours doing nothing but just kind of hanging out at the surface and blowing bubbles and just looking at my shadow in the sun, in the water, in the ripples of the water, so to speak. And it felt like me. There was something happening back then that I thought was normal back then, but looking back at it, it isn't very normal behavior. But now that I know my betta stereotype, it was basically just the biggest mental shift I've ever had, which is crazy. So having that flashback to that moment was pretty much the awakening of my betta fish stereotype. There was like a lamp going off, like bing. I was like, oh, it's me. I'm actually a betta fish, you know? That's basically how I found out I was a betta fish, and right now it doesn't play a very big role within my life because even though there's a lot of pieces that came together, it's just who I am, and furthermore I barely actually experience many shifts when it comes to my betta fish stereotype. Very rarely I still experience the fin on my back. I sometimes get mental shifts when I go out swimming, but I barely go swimming lately. My Therianthropy is mostly made up of my wolf stereotype, and the betta fish kind of just peeks around a corner every once in a while. But I do really love that it's part of my identity because I do think it's a very unique creature, and it also makes up for some pretty epic fan art, not gonna lie. That was a joke, by the way. my fan art does not play a role in my Therianthropy in any way. So basically how I look at it now is that the BETTA fish is just how I look at myself, so to speak, one of the ways that I would define myself, and sometimes the shifts come peeking around the corner and then it's just part of who I am, and that's pretty much it. There's not much else to question. The less interesting thing that I did want to note about my BETTA fish stereotype is that eventually I want a BETTA fish tattoo on my back with colors and all, because the colors are important, of course. Get a wolf tattoo on one arm and then a BETTA fish one on the other arm. I will definitely film that process if that ever happens. But I have actually promised myself that I will only get those tattoos once I've possessed those identities for 10 years or more. So yeah. Anyways, I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, please leave a like down below or maybe comment down below. Or if you have any critique, you can also comment down below, of course. And if you really like my video and want to see more in the future, perhaps consider to subscribe. And I'll be seeing you guys in my Therian territory in the next video. Bye. A massive thanks to my Therian territory members Bloody Tommy, Daphne's Den, Shadow the Wolf, Arden Zephyr, Clutch, Thomas, Voilo and Waita. Join the Therian territory membership for early access, extra features and content, and more personal contact with me.